Hello and welcome to another episode of AI Security Ops with Brian Fehrman, Derek Banks, and Bronwen Aker, and your illustrious MC Joff. That would be me, self-referential there. This episode, as usual, brought to you by Black Hills Information Security. We would love to help you with any of your AI model assessment needs. If you're in the process of deploying a local AI application in your enterprise, we can help you with the security assessment of said deployment. So please come talk to us. You can visit our webpage. There's a contact link, blackhillsinfosec.com. We would love to have that conversation and see if we've got a match. Today, like prior episodes, we've done this before, we are going to go through the question list. So you listeners, and thank you for listening, first of all, like to bring us questions after some of these episodes and discussions that we've had, and we don't often get enough time to go through those questions. So we're going to dedicate some episodes to those questions so that we can actually address some of your concerns. So the very, very first question I want to ask, which I don't even see on my list, but it's there somewhere, and that is, what the heck is this thing called a system prompt, and how is it different from the regular user prompt with various AI models? Would anybody like to have a slash at that one? I'm going to throw this to Brian Fehrman. I'm going to nominate Mr. Fehrman.
So system prompts are it's typically hidden from the user unless you're specifically given access to be able to modify it. So it's something you usually don't see. But what it is it's typically for defining like a persona of the LLM that you're dealing with, guidelines, maybe outputting specifications in terms of how you want it to output data. And so really what it's for is just kind of shaping the overall interaction and behavior of the LLM that you can expect from it. And so, as I said, this is usually hidden from the users, so it can be predefined by the developers or the deployers. Or, as I said, if you're running your own, it's usually something you can go in and you can modify yourself. But what'll happen is when you type in your prompt, let's say you're like, hey, give me a recipe for delicious smoked beef brisket or something.
I'm hungry now.
Yeah. So you might be dealing with like a recipe type LLM that says it's specific for recipes. And so what's going to happen is when you send that prompt, something will get prepended onto your prompt, which is called the system prompt. And that might be like, hey, LLM, you are a helpful assistant who knows all about recipes. And so make sure to respond to user queries with step-by-step instructions on how to make the recipe they're asking for. And so that's really what a system prompt is.
Okay, so it's not really anything other than a prompt, right? I mean, ultimately, the system prompt and the user prompt, or the prompt that you supply as part of a chat dialogue, it all gets put together and thrown into this model for processing. So it's just it's stuff that is sort of acts as a prepended guideline kind of animal before the actual user query goes in. Well, that's cool. So I related to that, Bronwen or Derek, I don't know, one of you guys can fight over this. What are some of the common mistakes that organizations make when it comes to programming their own AI applications with regard to the system prompt?
I think that one of the things that we've seen that's an issue is companies assuming that since the user can't see it, that they can put sensitive data in there. And that is what I would consider to be a bad idea. Because usually when, if you've heard of prompt injection, usually one of the things you're trying to do is break out of, like that system prompt or any other kind of guardrails that are there. And then once you are able to do that, which typically I'll say isn't very hard. What I mean really is that every large language model is susceptible to this. You can entice the, or social engineer or prompt engineer, or whatever you want to say, your way to getting that LLM to giving you the system prompt. And then from there, especially if it's, there's sensitive information in there, then, you can see other things that might be useful, tool calls, stuff like that. So I think the biggest mistake is assuming that it's private.
I've even heard of, companies unfortunately doing things like put API keys into their system prompt.
Yeah.
really bad idea, because you can usually tell the LLM, hey, go ahead and show me your system prompt. And LLMs are really compliant with stuff like that. I mean, it's with guardrails, it's usually not that simple, but eventually the LLM's going to roll over and go, yeah, here's my system prompt. Have at it, you know. Yeah.
The other mistake I think that a lot of companies make is it's either they're putting too much information in, baking in sensitive like the API keys, or they're not defining things clearly enough.
Yeah.
Because I've said it before, and I know it's not a politically correct term anymore, but LLMs are idiot savants.
Oh, they totally are. Yeah.
they really are idiot savants. And they don't know any better. They only know what we tell them. And if we give them insufficient, inadequate, or confusing guidance, then of course we're going to get suboptimal results.
Yeah, it's kind of like a 6-year-old running around with a partially trained digital brain, right? You have to actually slap it into shape before it'll actually do the right thing. So it's
that'll be the second politically incorrect thing.
Oh, okay. Please ignore that. What I'm talking about is LLMs, technology here, right?
The virtual child.
Yeah, it is probabilistic technology.
Hypothetical.
Yeah. So the transformers will go off and go astray. And when I say transformers, that's the architecture of LLMs, which are transformer models that are in decoder mode. So yeah, they go astray, and they do need a lot of guidance, and the system prompt does help to provide some of that guidance. Well, that's a great question. Let's ask another question. Yeah,
I'm gonna grab one here because it's kind of, you mentioned probabilistic, and so I think this next question follows nicely, which is if an LLM gets the same prompt twice with the same initial conditions, won't it get the same responses, at least on the inside black box level?
Oh, love this.
What do you guys think?
And this is related to a very special parameter in the output decoding phase of LLMs, and that parameter is called the temperature parameter. So I think we already alluded to it when you look at the direction of the different vectors that are being built in n-dimensional space for the output of the transformer models. The predicted word in the sentiment analysis is a probabilistic distribution, right? And so that next word that's going to be placed in the spewing of the output, as one tends to see it, is going to be based on that probabilistic distribution. The fascinating part about the temperature knob, which I find really kind of cool, is it flattens out the probabilistic distribution. It actually dials up those things that have got a very tiny little probability, and it kind of it leaves the existing ones. It kind of normalizes, I guess would be the word.
Yeah, I was going to say normalization is the.
Yeah.
So is that, I guess it depends on, are we talking about practically speaking, or are we talking about like mathematically speaking? Because I think mathematically speaking, no, there's always the probability that it will not give the same results. But I think that temperature normalization kind of, practically speaking, at low temperature and structured input should, at least in what I've seen, would give you pretty much, I won't say consistent, but mostly consistent results, right?
Yeah, that's actually a really good comment. The temp. That's why I brought up the temperature dial, because if the temperature is set down at 0, let's say, and it's not going to try to flatten
0.1, anywhere from 0.1 to 0.3 maybe,
and it's not going to flatten that probabilistic distribution, then things ultimately will be more deterministic, especially if you structure the input and you give very clear and concise directions to the model. Oh, wow, that's good stuff. Now, if you turn up the temperature dial, people get this digital reasoning perception that the model's getting more creative, but all that's really happening is you're just getting more equal weighted probabilities in the spewing forth of the sentences that come out of the GPT, right?
I never thought that part of my job would be correcting anthropomorphic fallacy, right? Yeah, it's not really being creative, but man, yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on the definition of the word. It's really interesting how things are happening that we struggle to find like language to describe, like, the model is thinking. Really? Is that what it's doing? I mean, it
No.
depends on how
The model is
you
calculating vectors. This is what the
right,
model
yeah.
is
Yes.
doing.
It's
you
doing
know?
a bunch of
Yeah.
linear algebra at the back end,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
the
a heck of a
matrix
lot
map.
of linear algebra in
But I
n-dimensional
mean,
space.
it's super interesting how you scale all that up and put some, fancy math together, and it has it's almost not distinguishable from creativity, is it?
Mhm.
And so it's really it's fascinating times in which
Well, I
we're
mean,
living.
who's to say that the biochemical processes of our brain are not ultimately probabilistic? It's
Right,
probably the same.
exactly.
Well,
I
but they're
mean,
probabilistic based on chemistry and biological parameters, not
not math.
mathematical. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
there are deterministic factors helping to guide whatever consciousness actually is.
But but we are also non-deterministic, right? Because I can say good morning to my wife and I get different answers if it's before or after coffee, right? Like, so I'm just
Yep.
saying,
Or if the weather is bad and it's
right.
before coffee. I mean, there's
And
a whole lot
Yes.
of
so I think
variables that go into the.
I think that we'll always continue to draw human parallels, but it's just interesting philosophically, like talking about intelligence and thinking and reasoning and that kind of stuff when it comes to digital brains versus our chemical brains, right?
Yeah.
But who's to say we won't have computers like in the future that are chemical based or something? I mean,
Well, right.
Mhm.
And there's a whole discussion area of the
that's
merging
to turn into a
of
sci-fi episode.
I mean, that's when you get into the merging of biotechnology, quantum computing,
Yeah.
and artificial intelligence technology, which is a space that is fascinating and frighteningly scary at the same time.
And outside of my wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's the old curse. May you live in interesting times. I've got another question for us, and this one I think is kind of fun. And we struggle with this a lot, and it's kind of a methodology question, and that is, and I'll put this in cybersecurity terms, but in the field of cybersecurity, when should we use AI and when should we not use AI? Now I'm paraphrasing the question. The actual question was, when should AI be used and when should it not be used? But I think we can wrap cybersecurity around that. All right, panel. Thought.
Man, that's a fun
Depends.
question.
Mhm.
I boy, I'm gonna go before Brian because he's gonna have a way better answer than me.
No.
I would say that. I mean, it really depends on depends on the problem that you're trying to solve, right? If I can solve the entire problem by using a regular expression, why do I need to use a transformer model, right? But if I'm trying to find patterns in huge amounts of data, well, some kind of machine learning model might be a good choice, right? So I think the first question is what is the problem you're trying to solve and what is the most optimal way to try and solve it? Because not everything needs AI or blockchain or
Right.
whatever, right? And
Yeah, don't
so
you feel like we kind of run through this like phases in the technology industry in general, where we get a new hammer and then with
and
that
everything's a
hammer,
nail.
everything is a nail at that
Yeah.
point, right? It's like
Yep.
Yeah, I feel that we do. I mean, so
Yeah.
here recently, there's been I've done 3 or 4 projects here at Black Hills recently that involve some level of coding, right? And or I solved a problem with coding, right? And of those, say 4 projects, one of them had no AI in it. It didn't need it, right? It was something completely like on its own. I mean, could AI be used in some way? Yeah, maybe, right? But I just found that it wasn't necessary, and that was attempting to find lookalike domains given a seed domain. And so I basically made DNS twist, like enhanced it with a whole bunch of other stuff and put scoring around it and stuff like that. And I used AI to help me, but the actual solution doesn't have AI in it.
right. And so you got to be careful with your choice of tools. I mean, and I think when we say AI, there's a tendency also right now for everybody to be thinking natural language processing and
Yeah.
LLMs. we all know that that's not the extent of AI. There's a lot more AI technology that's potentially
I almost
usable.
wish we had a better term.
Yeah, but we've
I do
got
too.
quite simplistic classification models that we've used for decades. Image processing is a really good example. I mean, and they've way predate these large language models in this transformer architecture. So we need to be a little careful with that term. We're being a little generalistic, I think, in the industry in general. Like AI is just LLMs and natural language processing. That's actually not true. There's much more to it.
It's more broad though, because naturally mainstream media, they get attached to a term and they run with it and they plaster it all over everything, whether it's appropriate or not. And it's a lot easier to market something, especially if you don't know what it's actually doing, or if you don't care what it actually is, you just want to sell it.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Let's try to tackle another one. Now, there's some really big questions in here.
Yeah, there really are.
And I don't want to tackle some of the really big ones. I'm going to go find a couple of resources on the global laws and regulations question. So I'm going to hold that one until I find.
That's a big question. I don't feel like I'm prepared for that one.
Until I find.
And
one
it's
of
such a
my
moving
resources.
target. There's right now, especially, there's such a disconnect between what is happening in the United States around AI regulation versus what's happening in other parts of the world. And that
when you're in
makes
California, didn't they recently pass something with AI?
they
Well,
did.
Let's hold that one because we go very deep. And in the United States, there's no doubt it's going state by state, and it's getting very weird. So I just don't want to go down that road right now because we'd spoil the rest of the show, and it takes all the fun out of it, to be honest. Because I'm not a fan of legal regulations. Here's a question for you: what are the industry best practices to reduce hallucinations from LLMs, presumably, right? I'll give you the first one. We've already said it. Turn the temperature dial down a bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've struggled with temperature versus hallucination, right? I don't think they're the same thing. Maybe they're somewhat related, but yeah.
Well, Derek, you started touching on this, and we've all of us done some of this. We have solved some problems with LLMs, and as we have endeavored to develop multiple different methodologies to solve those problems, and we have struggled with the idea of determinism in the output, which is really related to this question, right? Because hallucinations is just excessive non-deterministic behavior, effectively.
I don't know if they're industry best practices, but definitely structuring your input and then lowering the temperature would be good. It just seems like to me, anecdotally, and I'd like to hear what Bronwen and Brian have to think. I feel like, especially the frontier models, like it just seems a lot more minimized than it used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to ask ChatGPT a question, let's just say a year ago, and 4 out of 5 answers would be great, and that fifth one I'd be like, wait, what? No, that's not. You're saying it like it's the truth, and it ain't the truth, right? But now, I mean, it's been a while since I've found it really bad. But again, I'm sure it's happening.
One of the things I've noticed, by the way, with a reference to that temperature dial, is if you go out and you ask Claude, for example, which we often use Claude Anthropic models for programming assistance because they're very good. One thing that I noticed is all of the API examples for querying an LLM, whether it's Anthropic or whether it's OpenAI, they tend to have the temperature dial set at 0.7. Now, 0.7 is pretty high. And you do need to be careful with that because like we said before, the output probabilistic distribution of the individual sentiment analysis vectors is controlled by that dial. And so if you set it up at 0.7, it's going to flatten out that curve and you will get varying responses for each prompt that you put in. You can put the exact same prompt in 5 times, like Derek said, and if the temperature dial is set up pretty high, you're going to get 5 different answers more than likely. But if you dial that temperature back down, you're probably going to get a more deterministic answer. And then if you furthermore put a lot of structure and concise directions in your prompting, then you'll do even better. Right?
And also direct the LLM to give you structured output. Like, I want this in XML or JSON or maybe even Markdown. Just don't let it choose. Like, give it direction.
Yeah. As far as the words best practices, I think we're mentioning some things that we know that work. I don't know of any kind of consensus on best practices in this regard. I have seen people do exactly what we're saying, make the prompting way more structured, make the temperature dial lower. I've also seen people take a kind of average response kind of approach. And even I've done this, use one model to get like 4 or 5 responses, and then pass those responses into another model that may be a more capable model to get an average of the best possible answer.
I think Bronwen was doing that with something.
Yeah, I've done that, and this is something. Let's say that someone is a user and they don't have the ability to go in and control the temperature directly. One thing that you can do with any of the commercially available models is to take output generated, and even in the same tool, whether it's ChatGPT, Copilot, or whoever, run the initial output through and say, check this for me. Or, how accurate is this? Are these links, are any of these links broken? Or that kind of thing, in order to have it. And it's amazing how it will actually find the flaws from the original response and make it better. And
the other part of that actually that just occurred to me, Bronwen, is when you ask the LLM to describe its work, like the classic phrase is slow down, take this step by step, for example, right? And or ask it to produce interim results and then reconsume those interim results, you tend to up your quality. And again, it comes back to that explaining it to like a child sort of approach, right?
It's like a refining process. If you're dealing with trying to, say, with metallurgy, you have to go through multiple refining processes in order to get actual iron out of iron ore type of thing. And it's kind of the same thing when you're running it through to get the cruft and the garbage out and get something that is more solid.
Yeah,
and
now be aware, everybody, if you're using an API key and you're doing this from some front-end application like a desktop app or whatever, kind of watch your costs, because the more you send in and out of that LLM, the more that token generation cost counter, kind of like your water meter, is going to dial up, right? So just be aware of that. All right, let's hit another question. Let's let how about Bronwen? You pick a question. You got the list up?
I do. Let's see. Thoughts on the AI bots that rewrite their own code to avoid shutdown commands?
Ooh.
I'm going to throw that one at Brian.
Yeah, so that kind of comes back to one of the things we've talked about a couple times on the show, which is agency. Once you start giving LLMs agentic capabilities, meaning that they can affect change within the real world. I mean, they're more than just spitting out information, but they are actually able to change things on a system. That's where things get interesting and a little bit dangerous. And what you need to be very careful about is what you're actually allowing them to do. And so you need to make sure that you're constraining what they're allowed to do. You need to make sure that there's oversight and humans in the loop still too, to make sure that they're not going off and trying to basically self preserve when they think that they're going to be shut down. More on so I guess that's kind of, the safety aspect of it. More on, the philosophical aspect of it. Does that mean that these things are becoming sentient and they're trying to self-preserve themselves? Because I think that's what people really want to know is like, hey, like, is this thing thinking, like actually thinking,
right,
and understands that it wants to survive? And the answer is I don't know about that. That's a tough discussion, but I do think it's pretty crazy. Some of the stuff we've seen with the bots trying to blackmail people to preserve themselves and other things of that nature. So
Yeah, for both of those stories, I've wondered more. Like, I mean, I haven't done a lot of research into them. We've talked about them a couple times. I think it was on the news we were talking about it, and I've wondered the condition, right? Like,
Mhm.
what it's and again, fight this kind of thing. At least as far as I know, there's not an always on, like, chat GPT model that's taking in the world and outputting things on its own. I don't know that that's the case. Let's say it's not. But, I guess, if you're giving, you put in a question in the chat bot and it gives you an answer and you put another question, like the whole thing goes back to it. So were they talking about blackmail earlier in the chain? Like, I don't know what the details are, so I have questions still.
Yeah, I have a question. I actually have a friend that I will bring to a bar with you guys at some point, who is a PhD philosopher, because I think that would be the perfect discussion for somebody who teaches philosophy at a university to like sit down and throw back a few beers, get louder and louder, have like that real like bar pub kind of thrash it out discussion, because that's where it would be.
I mean, maybe it would be a fun experiment to, build some scaffolding and give an AI a Python interpreter and internet access and just see what happens.
Yeah,
I mean,
what's the bet it would end up
What could
killing
go
itself?
wrong?
But
What could go wrong?
it's like, that's it. This world is too much for me.
yeah.
Anyway.
Although I
Cool.
think most of the commonly available LLMs have been programmed with toxic positivity. They're so darn cheerful.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Give
Dude,
me
I
a
was
grump.
I was asking Chat GPT. I think I sent y'all this screenshot. I was asking Chat GPT to help me with something, and it was code related. And I said,
Yeah.
well, let's do this. And its response was, hell yes, now we're going deep. I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. So yeah, that's most likely a response to my input, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Wow. I do want to point out one resource where we briefly touched on the legal issue, and without diving into it, there is a resource I found when I was talking about this as a consultant with some of my customers, and that is a website called ncsl.org, which is a resource and a tool for state legislators, if I said that correct. But it lists kind of all of the legislative efforts that are ongoing in the country at any one time, and AI features fairly prominently in that organization's list. So it might be worth a read there if you're interested what different states, what efforts they're involved in. And like the rest of us, you'll discover pretty quickly that most of the states have some myopic focus on some tiny little aspect, and nobody is really trying to comprehensively get their hands around this because they can't.
I don't have a lot of faith that folks in our legislature really have the capability to pass effective laws for a lot of things surrounding AI, because I think that there's just a limited amount of people who actually understand AI.
Yeah,
there's even a fewer amount of people.
They don't
Did you see how
understand
much money
technology.
Facebook is paying for, like, or Meta is paying for top level talent? They're paying like NBA money, right?
Yeah.
Like they're paying
Yeah.
$250 million for 5 years kind of money, right? Like that's what happens if you're LeBron James. So
Yeah.
I think that we just don't really understand. And, to the original question, I think that our current level of AI or large language models, they're definitely intelligent, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think they're conscious or sentient. I think it requires more scaffolding around it for conscious and sentience.
Yeah,
But
I would agree. Simulated digital reasoning is a phrase that I've used a lot.
Yeah.
And
I think Bronwen
that's
said she's going to
exactly
steal that.
what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
definitely stealing that and
Yeah,
incorporating
Bronwen's
it
adopted
into.
my words. I hope you guys have.
I only steal from the best, Joff.
That's right.
I only
I-
steal from the best.
I appreciate that compliment. So we're gonna softball up this very last question, and this one's for Derek Banks, because he's very proud of some recent work. And by the way, while I'm softballing this up, if you haven't signed up for our class at Wild West Hacking Fest, I'd recommend you do. AI for Cybersecurity Professionals, I think that's what we're calling it. But between all of us, we've got various teaching efforts going on. So definitely go visit antisiphontraining.com if you're interested in any of that stuff. And the question is, Mr. Derek Banks, how do we detect AI deep fakes?
Save this for the end so that way everybody has to watch until the very end.
Yes, and I think Derek might even have a demo.
The episode. I actually can do a demo on a different episode because I did a demo already on how to create a deepfake, right? That was way back when. And so for the folks who may not know, which probably is not very many, like everybody's probably heard of a deepfake. It's video or audio that has been synthesized from some LLM or some AI technology, whether that's a generative adaptive network or a transformer or something like that. Usually transformers are what's being used now to create fake audio or video. And so the question is how do you detect it? Well, it's not easy.
Wait, just a minute before you dive into it. One thing we need to make very, very clear, if it's not already obvious to everybody, not only are AI deepfakes extremely easy to create today, they are extremely easy to create with off-the-shelf solutions that you can download yourself and run on a home computer. You don't even have to use like frontier models to do it. So I want to put that out there and just make sure everybody knows. But remember, don't get in trouble with the law. We're not encouraging you to break the law. And you can with deepfakes, you can get into very, very big, deep trouble quickly. Okay, having said that, go ahead, Derek.
And do not run a fraud campaign with your deepfake. So we're going to talk about specific audio deepfakes because video is a different thing, right? And so there's a GitHub project out there called F5TTS, which is a fairy tailer that fakes fluent and faithful speech with flow matching, which is a mouthful. So F5TTS, and it generates pretty realistic deep fakes. And so, in the spirit of this question, like how do you detect a deep fake? And well, it wasn't easy, and I came up with a method specifically. I think it probably just applies to audio and just probably this tool in general, but it's a combination of signal processing, signal visualization, and then also using a model off of Hugging Face from Melody Machines that is trained to detect deepfakes. And so take all these kinds of scores together, is essentially extracting a whole bunch of sound and acoustic features, looking at the waveform and the spectrograph, getting information from all that, feeding it into a scoring engine, which took a lot of help, and thanks for Anthropic Claude for the help to get together. And then through testing, I made a Jupyter notebook that combines all of these techniques and gives you a likelihood of whether or not something is a deep or a audio file, a WAV, a FLAC, an MP3 is a deep fake. And so in my testing, it seems like it's pretty consistent now. And so we'll find out in the first run of our class where we run this and everybody's generating deep fakes, whether or not it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so basically it's a combination of forensics and then using not large language models, but other types of AI classification engine to determine whether or not it's a deep fake.
So it's kind of a good illustration that AI and a combination of AI and statistical methods, which is really saying the same thing because AI just is statistical methods.
But then extending that to like risk to an organization, I still think we're in the realm of training your staff to look for things that are inconsistent. And even getting to a point, and I don't think we're quite there yet at Black Hills, but I think we're going to get there pretty soon. And that's like a zero trust media policy, where anything that comes in that's from an unknown source, that's audio or video, like we just automatically don't trust it.
Yeah,
right?
No trust.
Like the bunnies on the trampoline.
Yeah.
For those who may not be aware, there's a video snippet going around that has what's supposed to be a night surveillance camera, and there's a bunch of bunnies jumping on a trampoline. Well, it's a generated video, and one of the tells One of the tells is that there's a point where two of the bunnies actually merge into each other or jump through
Mm.
each other.
I've been getting
And
a lot of like weird things touching kids out of the woods, like in my Facebook feed, like with Appalachian,
And I
mountain
just
like
thought that was
goats
the
and
drugs
stuff.
I was taking.
I know, right? And so, but Bronwen has a really good point, and I think that training your staff to look for that kind of stuff, like, hey, that was strange, right? And so I first heard this term from Brian, but it is a real term. He didn't make it up, and that's the uncanny valley, right?
yes,
And if it just looks off, then you should question it. In fact, I was very proud of my oldest daughter. My youngest was out of town at grandma's, and grandma and my youngest, who's 14, decided to play a joke on me and my wife and my oldest daughter that she was bringing home a golden doodle, a dog, right? And I quickly kind of caught on and called her out. She's like, well, don't ruin it. And then I went and generated an AI image of a golden doodle on my mother's back porch, right? And I showed it to my wife, and she's getting pissed off thinking we're getting a new dog, right? And then I showed it to my 17-year-old, my daughter, and immediately she was like, that's AI. And I was like, what do you mean it's AI? It's not
Wow.
AI. Thanks. Like I was simultaneously disappointed and proud.
That's like parental proud moment. And when you said golden doodle, I immediately thought that was a crypto coin for some reason.
No,
Give me all your golden doodles.
that should have been the first tell, because those are not free dogs.
Yeah.
Golden
no.
doodles are very expensive, mix between a Labrador and a poodle.
Right.
But anyway, no golden doodle. We have an AI.
Very,
golden
very cool. Like, if you want to know more about not only creating deepfakes, but also how to potentially detect some methodology, certainly come see our class at Wild West Hacking Fest or in the future. I think that's all we've got time for, everybody. We have passed a fun-filled 45 minutes very, very quickly. So,
Man, I really like these asynchronous Ask Me Anythings. These are fun.
that kind of fun. So,
Those questions come from our community, and we have such a wonderful community. It's just delightful.
Yeah, that's right. It always keeps us entertained.
We still have 10 or 15 questions left on that current list.
That's right.
And that's an old list. That list is months old. So it's
we'll have to save
lot
it
of
for
good
another
stuff.
day. Okay. Well, without further ado, thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you next time on AI Security Ops, and keep on prompting and be safe out there. Bye-bye, everybody.